Earlier, AI required machine learning knowledge and coding skills, so only researchers and engineers could use it effectively. But with modern tools like ChatGPT and Claude, something changed. Now anyone can interact with AI just using plain English. But here's the catch. Just because anyone can ask anything to AI does not mean that they know how to ask it effectively. And that's exactly why you need to learn prompt engineering today. Prompt engineering is a skill of communicating with AI in a way that gets you much better, more accurate, and more useful results. Think of it like Googling effectively, or writing better search queries, or giving clearer instructions to a smart assistant. The better is your prompt, the better is the output. So in this video, we'll be diving deep into few prompting techniques and best practices that you can follow for writing good prompts. So let's get started. Let's get started with prompt engineering basics. So, what is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering is basically the optimization of prompts or inputs that you are feeding to your LLMs in order to be able to get the most relevant and accurate response from the LLMs. And why prompt engineering was needed is because even though LLMs are very powerful and intelligent, they still need guidance from you in order to be able to come up with a response that you are looking for. So, for example, if you write a prompt like write a poem, then the LLM will respond with a poem which is very generic. When you actually want a poem on motivation, it's better to write that in the prompt saying that write a poem on motivation. Then the LLM response will be much more tailored to you and it will be the one that you are actually looking for. So for writing good prompts, you can follow this basic prompt structure, which has these four parts. First one is the instruction, which is basically what exactly you want the LLMs to do. Second is the context, which is any additional information that you think an LLM might need in order to be able to completely solve that problem or come up with the answer effectively. Third is the input, which is the actual input that you want the instructions to be performed on. So, for example, for a summarization task, the actual input can be the actual document or the content of the document. Fourth is the output format, which is the format that you want the LLM to respond in. This helps in getting the most relevant information that you are looking for from the LLMs. If you provide it a structure that, okay, I'm looking only for the problem statement, key contributions, core concepts in this summary that you are providing, then it will be a much better response from the LLMs. Next is the prompting techniques that you can follow in order to be able to use LLMs effectively. So there are a lot of prompting techniques. The ones that I'm going to discuss in this video are the ones that you see here. So first one is the zero shot prompting. So what is zero shot prompting? It is basically prompting with no examples and only instructions. So for example, here you see I have given a movie review where it says the movie was horrible and then just put a sentiment, and I'm hoping that the LLM will complete it for me saying whether the sentiment was positive, negative, etc. So if you look at the response, it says the sentiment is negative, which is the correct response. There can be some scenarios where the LLM is not performing well on zero shot prompting. Then you need to move to the few shot prompting, where you will be providing LLMs with few examples in order to learn the pattern, and then the LLM will be able to do better on a new input that you give. So, for example, here I have instructed the LLM that extract person's name, and I have given it a few example, and then I gave a new input text, which it did a good job of extracting the name from it. Next is the chain of thought prompting. So, chain of thought prompting is basically making the model reason step by step to come up with an answer, because models are not good with reasoning tasks like solving mathematical problems. So this technique becomes very helpful when you're trying to solve a mathematical problem. So if you see here, the example that I have given is I have 10 apples. I gave 3 to my younger sibling, 2 to my elder sibling, then went to the market and bought 21 more apples and distributed equally between all three of us. How many apples does each one of us have? So if you actually solve this problem, you'll notice that the LLM has answered that I'll have 8 apples, which is incorrect. So, how to make LLMs better at reasoning tasks is by providing them examples of how to actually approach problems like this, how to solve it step by step. So, if I move to the another example that I have given here, here I have given the question and then supplied the LLM with an answer with a step by step approach on how I would solve this problem. And then if I give it a question, you can see that LLM did a much better job than it did last time, and it was actually able to come up with the answer which is correct. So, moving on to some of the best practices that you can follow for writing good prompts. So, first one is write clear and specific prompts. For example, if I give an LLM a prompt like plan a trip to Italy, then it will come up with a very generic response. While if I give much more context, saying that plan a family trip to Italy in the month of June for 10 days from Berlin, then the response that you'll get from LLM will be much more tailored to you, and it will make more sense, and it will have much more relevant or accurate information that you are basically looking for. Okay. So moving on to the next best practice, which is specifying a role that AI needs to assume to answer the question effectively. So what is a role? Basically, if you see the messages, there are different roles that you can assume when you are passing the messages to the LLMs. So the role user is basically the prompt that you want to pass to the LLMs, and the role system is basically the system message that you want to pass to the LLM, which is basically which sets the tone or the behavior that AI needs to assume in order to come up with the answer for you effectively. So for example, you can say you're a helpful assistant, or you can say you're a expert math teacher when you're trying to solve some complex mathematical problems. You can control how AI responds just by sending a system message. Say here I have taken a example of a mathematical problem where I'm trying to solve multiplication of some big numbers, and I said to the LLM that you're a helpful assistant when math is needed, respond with this JSON. And there are other roles as well. For example, there's a role tool, and the content of it is basically the response that it gets from a tool call. So here, if you see, I've mentioned that the tool is calculator and expression is this. It can actually make a actual tool call to calculator and evaluate this expression, and then the expression that is evaluated, or the answer that is evaluated from this expression, can be put in this, basically, so that that can be incorporated when the LLM is trying to give you a answer to your actual prompt, right? So in this I have just hard coded it, but in actuality you'll be actually making a call to a external tool or a tool that you can define in this and get the answer. So that is what this role tool is about. Then there is another role called assistant, which is basically the response that you get from the AI assistant while you are chatting with it. You can keep appending these messages here so that it preserves the history and you are able to get a much better response. Through these roles, basically, you can control how AI is responding to your questions, and it's very effective. Next is specifying the action that needs to be performed by AI, which we have already spoken about. It is basically the instruction that you want to give AI that should be very clearly specified in your prompts, and that will help AI come up with a much better answer. So, for example, here I have specified using this action keyword saying classify the sentiment of the text as positive, negative, or neutral, and then given the actual text. You can actually use these words. It gives clarity to AI what this text is about, and it's very helpful when coming up with the answer. Next is specifying the output format. We've already spoken about this when we were talking about summarizing the document, how important it is to specify the output format, because then you are able to actually get the filtered relevant information that you are looking for, and not any information which is not relevant to you. So it's very important that you specify the output format. Here I've linked some resources on the best practices that you can follow for writing good prompts. I'm sure there are many resources out there. You can continue searching the internet for such kind of things. But yeah, this is just for starting. And there are a lot of prompt sources where you can get good already tested prompts. Like there's libraries like FlowGPT, there are prompt marketplaces, prompt base. There are also communities like Reddit, Discord, etc. So to conclude, prompting is an iterative process. So you start with a initial prompt, then you evaluate AI's response, how accurate or how relevant it is, how complete it is to what you were looking for, then refine the prompt and keep repeating this cycle until you are able to achieve the desired result. So in the next video, I'll be discussing about more advanced techniques on prompting. So stay tuned. And if you learned something from this video, then don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.